So I always tell parents, you're making an investment in your children's future that's going to reap benefits more than you could ever imagine. It's a great investment that you're making, but I know there's some sacrifices that you have to make. I had 5 daughters go through here, so I know what it costs. They don't give break to the faculty who pay singing. But I want to thank you for making that sacrifice. But thank you for entrusting your children to us. Sometimes it's harder, I think, on the parents than it is on the kids to send them away to school. We'll do our best to keep them connected with us. You can watch our games online if you can't be here. We'll try to keep communication flowing as freely as possible through our social media and any other way we can, because we understand the challenges. Most of the faculty, a lot of the faculty here, well, we have a lot of new people this year, but a lot of us understand what it's like to have your kid go away to school, whether it's here or whether it's Martin Luther College. So thank you very much for giving us your children. This is the best place it could be. What better place could they be when every morning we're going to start our day with Bible class? That's how our day starts. Every evening we're going to have chapel. And they're going to do it with like-minded believers. I mean, what's better than that? That's the best times of our day, gathering around the Word of God. So I always tell the guys, you know, there's probably a lot of team unity and team chemistry with a lot of teams around the state of Michigan, but no one can be tighter really than a team like ours, because we're one in faith, and that's the most important thing. So that's the joy of serving here and having your kids. Laundry instructions, it's a lot easier than it used to be. We get a barrel in our locker room, one for the JV team, one for the varsity team. The guys can put their stuff, encourage your sons, please, to put their stuff daily in the wash barrel so we don't have a lot of stank in the locker room, because it gets really nasty as the week goes along. I think some of them like to see how their clothes can get stiff and just kind of hang there in the hanger. So encourage them to do their wash, have them bring them home on the weekend if they're coming home. We have wash machines here on campus for the dorm students. That's part of the deal here, so it's open to use. But Kathy Eubank is our laundry lady. She comes in every day, usually works into the late in the evening, very late in the evening, sometimes around midnight, washing and drying all the clothes for all the athletes here on campus. General goals that we want to accomplish in our program, number one is to glorify our God on and off the field. So that's the most important thing, not winning, glorifying our God on and off the field. So we do that with our sportsmanship, with how we play hard here at seminary, use the gifts that God has given to us, and then off the field in the classroom, in the commons, in the dormitory, in the community, being shining examples to those around us because of what our God has done for us. Use those God-given abilities. Everyone has God-given abilities. I mean, sometimes we've had, you know, like the 5'2" guy. He's not going to have the same abilities as the 6'3" guy. They have, not to say the 5'2" guy might be a better athlete, but they have different abilities. You know, one might be stronger, one might be faster, one might be more agile. Everyone has different abilities. So it's our job as coaches to do our best to try to get those abilities out of them and encourage them to use them. To learn the game and especially learn teamwork. So in a society where we live in, where it's very self-centered and very me type of society, the more we can do to get people to understand that a team is what it's all about. And as we're preparing people for future ministry and future service in the church, even if we don't become a pastor and teacher, future leaders in our church, what could be better than to learn how to work together with different people? People from different parts of the country, people that don't have the same likes that we have. So that's one of the best things about football. It's the best team game there is, when everyone has to work together to be successful. But really, a lot of that is about serving one another. and you realize that being a leader and being a good teammate is serving somebody else, then we've accomplished our goal. And then have fun, because it's a game. And the more I do this, this will be my 20th year of coaching here at MLS, and the more you do it, the more you realize that the game it should be fun. Yeah, we want to win. I always tell people I hate losing until I play euchre every day on my phone, do the Michigan card game. I hate losing the euchre on my phone. So I'm a very competitive person, and it's good to teach them that winning is a good thing. It's a good goal to use our gifts, to work together. Sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it does. But in the process, throughout that whole process, you have to have fun doing it. Otherwise, why play the game? So hopefully we never lose that perspective for our general goal of our program. So we are training future church leaders, therefore we want well-rounded students and athletes. And by that I mean we want them exposed to a lot of different things. And this is why I'm bringing this up in this parent meeting. And by the way, since I'm the new athletic director, I decided what we're going to do this year is something a little bit different. In fact, we're being streamed right now, or at least it's being recorded so you can watch this later again. But before every major sports season, we're going to have a parent meeting on a Sunday night. I'll pick out the date and we'll send out the date. Just for the coaches to be able to introduce themselves, tell the goals of their program, some of the rules that you need to know, some of the things I want you to know as athletic director. And if you can't be here, we'll have it streamed and you'll be able to watch it online. So we're going to try and see how that works this year and go from there. But we want well-rounded students and athletes, so we will encourage our athletes to be involved in other sports and activities. So there's some schools that you can go to where they just want, you're going to focus, I want you to focus on football year-round. And the guys will tell you this. I've had guys in the springtime before come up to me, Coach, I'm not going to play a spring sport. I'm going to live for football. Kind of looking at me like with a little twinkle in their eye, like, yeah, boy. And I'm like, no, I don't want you to do that. You go out for track or baseball. It's great for the kids, and when you're at this age in high school, to enjoy high school. To learn how to compete in other sports, to learn how to get along with other teammates, to learn maybe how in one sport you're a star, in another sport you're a bench player, and a scout team player. Those are wonderful life lessons for our kids to learn. They don't have to be a star in some sport or even activity, whether it's drama or music, to be involved. It's just good to be involved. So if you can encourage them to do that. Let your child enjoy high school with his friends and encourage him to participate in stuff. So it's not just athletic stuff, it's whatever their gifts may be. We have a great music program here. I was in the concert choir when I was here at MLS. I can play the piano. I had piano lessons here at MLS. Every once in a while for camp, I'll play a hymn for chapel. And the guys will look back and like, what? Coach, look, you can play the piano. What's going on here? I'm like, yeah, it's cool. So it's nice to have well-rounded people if we want, these are future leaders in the church, right? Pastors and teachers and other church leaders. The more experiences they have, the better. So you're a big part of that. We also want to be a model for sportsmanship. So that's a high priority at MLS. All of us in our athletic departments, all of our sports, we promote good sportsmanship among our athletes and parents. So one example in football, okay, maybe the guys, the seniors should be able to answer this. So I'll tell the guy, and this goes way back to other coaches before me too, I know. Hit him hard, knock him on the ground, and then do what? Help him back up, and then do what? Sit him down again. So, that's what you do. That's good sportsmanship. You play hard, help the guy off the ground. You can hit him down on the ground again, and help him back up again. Shake his hand after the game before losing. Be gracious, hey, great game. And be humble winners. So there's lots of things that we can learn as far, and the parents don't need to be leaders with this. Okay, I'll be honest with you. One thing, in my humble opinion, that I've observed the last few years is a little bit of decline in sportsmanship among our parents as I sit in the stands. And I know it's hard. You know, all of us have that sinful nature that as soon as that ref makes a bad go, ah! You know, it's like a natural reaction almost to us, right? We do it in front of the TV at home. You know? You gotta be kidding me! But the more we can promote sportsmanship with our parents as the example, the more that's going to trickle down to our kids too. So we should be models here at MLS. It's a challenge not to voice our opinions. However, and I'll be honest, you know, there's times when I voice my opinion as well. It's hard. It's a constant battle to fight within us. Okay? But I just encourage you, don't be like this on this next slide. Okay? Here's just an example of someone giving their opinion.
Thank you. Can I help you today? No thanks. I'm just looking. Oh, this is cute. So?
That could be, and that could be nice too. I just did one commercial. Not guys. So we do not want to criticize or abuse the officials. That's it. Okay? Many people are reluctant to enter into officiating because of this. There is a shortage of officials, not just in the state of Michigan, but across the nation. Because they're like, why do I want to go into that? I just get berated. And by the way, as much as I can talk about our parents, you go to other schools, officials will tell us they love to come to seminary because we're not dropping F-bombs at them left and right as coaches. Our chain gang that's on the other side of the field by the other coaches from other teams coming in for football, they hear a few choice words from the sideline. And so, these officials are giving up their time. Most of them are, just trying to get back to a game they love. Now, it's true. Some of them aren't very good. Yeah. Big surprise, right? That's just the way it is. Think about it at the pro level. Some of them aren't very good. Well, in high school, all you got to really do to be an official, and I used to be a high school basketball official for 8 years of my life. All you got to really do to be a basketball official is to pass a written test. And I've been told you can have your book open now to pass it. So then they throw you to the wolves, usually starting with grade school, middle school. But, nowadays, because there's such a shortage of officials, some of those really young officials are doing varsity games before you know it. So the way you really learn as an official is by experience. And some are better than others. So it is what it is, and you just have to accept it. You're never going to change the judgment call of an official. The only time I'll ever get on an official to a certain degree is when they don't know the rules. They don't know the rules that are in the rule book, because that hurts our players who are trying their best to play within the rules. So they got to know the rules. But otherwise, judgment calls, you really can't do much about it. So let's try to encourage them, thank them if you have the opportunity with the officiating. Because no officials, you have no names, and it's already happening. I was just at the NHSA headquarters a couple weeks ago for training, for AU training, and they were saying how they've had to cancel some events. Like now lacrosse has become a big thing in Michigan, so you need more officials for that. They haven't had enough officials to do all the events. Or sometimes you only have one official instead of two like you want to have. So it's not a good situation. So if you know anyone that's interested in giving back to a sport, encourage them to be an official. The Bible says, let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So that's why we do what we do for sportsmanship. To glorify our God, because it's by His grace and we are who we are. So I guess that's just a huge encouragement in this season and every season this year. Let's be models as MLS parents, and coaches, and athletes for sportsmanship. Okay, concussion protocol. Well, the big thing, it's a big thing in the news, right? Concussion, especially with football. And we're doing things a little bit differently here at MLS with our concussion protocol. And I thought, what better way to talk about that than to bring the expert from the area here to talk to you. And so Dr. Brian Purchase from Covenant Sports Medicine and Wendy from his team, they are here today. And I invite him to come up, and he's going to tell you and be able to answer any questions you might have about concussion. Dr. Purchase.
Thanks for having me here. As Coach Carl has mentioned, I'm from Covenant Healthcare. Wendy is with me as well. She's an RN from the Injury Prevention Program through the Trauma Program at Covenant Healthcare. We gave a speech back in March, I think, in spring to the coaches here, and we talked about concussion. And we discussed about a new program that Covenant's offering, how we're offering baseline testing. And so we partnered up with MLS, mainly because I've seen a number of you athletes in the office. Vicki, your school nurse, I don't know if she's here tonight, and Jen have worked closely with me in the past. And we've forged a nice relationship throughout the past year or so. So I thought, why not formalize this a little bit more? And so we came out and talked to the coaches, and Coach Carl thought it would be a good idea to present at this meeting tonight to allow you to have any questions if you need it. I just wanted to wear one of these. Can you hear me now? Excellent. So actually, I thought we should probably be talking about heat-related illness today, but we're going to stick with concussion. I think the weather's going to get a little bit better this week for first week of practice, so it shouldn't be a big issue. A couple things I wanted to talk about. I'm going to try to make this short. I know that you're probably exhausted. It's been a long day for you guys, but we're going to get a little bit of a lecture on concussion. It is a requirement through the state of Michigan that the coaches, and not only coaches, but athletes and their parents have some education on concussion. So this should fulfill some of that information for you. So we're going to define concussion. We're going to talk about the symptoms, the clinical course of concussion, how we evaluate and manage concussion, how you do it here, understand the return to play and return to learn protocols, and know that the laws here in the state of Michigan, I know a lot of you come from out of state, so just understand what we do here in Michigan. And then just a brief comment on the long-term consequences of concussion, and then talk about the baseline testing. So there are many definitions of concussion out there. I tend to follow the one that's defined by the consensus statement on concussion. That's through a committee that meets about every couple of years. The most recent committee meeting was 2016. The information came out in 2017, so they're probably due to meet again this year. But they come up with the latest guidelines in concussion and information and the latest research. So we'll just go over the specific definition, how they describe concussion. Sports-related concussion is a traumatic brain injury induced by biomechanical forces. Sports-related concussion may be caused either by a direct blow to the head, face, neck, or elsewhere on the body with an impulsive force transmitted to the head. It's typically resulting in rapid onset of short-lived impairment of neurologic function that resolves spontaneously. However, in some cases, signs and symptoms may take either minutes, hours, or even sometimes days to develop. It may result in a neuropathological change, but the acute clinical signs and symptoms largely reflect a functional, this is the important part, functional disturbance rather than a structural injury. Structural meaning there is no bruising or bleeding. As such, you would not see any type of changes or abnormalities on any type of X-ray, CAT scan, or MRI. So it's more of a functional or a metabolic disturbance rather than a structural disturbance. It results in a range of clinical signs and symptoms that may or may not, this is important, may or may not involve loss of consciousness. In fact, most concussions do not involve loss of consciousness. So highlights are that it could be a blow to the body and not just the head. That's very important to know. It's considered a functional, a biomechanical disturbance rather than a structural injury, and there's, again, often no loss of consciousness. I bring it down to the level of a teenager. Some of you I've probably seen in the office. I always talk about the bowl of Jell-O. Basically, the forces that are transmitted to the brain causes the brain to shake and rattle around inside that skull, much like what a bowl of Jell-O does when you shake it back and forth. Not to say that your brains are Jell-O, but it is very similar consistency. And you get this change in the ions, the potassium, the calcium, and the glucose. This is what causes the symptoms of concussion, which are many. When we do our sideline evaluations, when Jen does her sideline evaluation, when I do an office evaluation, we ask the 22 concussion symptoms, and they include what you see on the screen here. The most immediate symptoms typically are that of headache. I got my bell rung, I'm feeling dizzy, I just don't feel right, might feel dizzy or sick to my stomach. The really important thing here is that you don't ignore those symptoms at all and continue playing, because the consequences of getting hit yet again could be quite bad. So either you got to let coach know, let Jen know, let your parents know if a day later you're starting to feel funny. This requires an evaluation, and Jen does an extremely good job at managing concussion here, and we've worked together in getting players back safely. So some general points is that it is the most common form of brain injury. Concussion rates are higher in certain sports, as you would expect, football being the top. There is about a 4 to 6 time increased risk of concussion after the first one, so it's easier to get a second concussion. Oftentimes the concussion symptoms last longer second time around. And the pediatric population has a particularly increased risk because of the developing brain. Most concussions, up to 90% of concussions, get better in about a week to 10 days. However, in the younger athletes and in teenagers, I'm typically seeing about a 2 to 3 week recovery time. It just depends. Everybody's a little bit different. So how we evaluate concussions includes, ideally, and this doesn't have to happen, but it is recommended that all athletes before season obtain a baseline neurocognitive test. I'll go over that in a minute here. If you get hit, someone ideally like Jen, your athletic trainer, would do a sideline evaluation after a head injury, determine whether or not you may have had a concussion. Then the concussion is often monitored in various ways, either through the athletic trainer, since you have such close contact with Jen here, she'll continue doing the monitoring. Oftentimes I'll see athletes on a weekly basis if necessary. We do our office assessment testing, and then if necessary, and it's an additional tool, we can then do that neurocognitive test that we obtained as a baseline when you were presumably normal, to be able to compare that information with pre-injury results. And then for complicated cases, then we would get neuropsych involved if necessary. That's very rare that we need to do that. So with neurocognitive testing, we would establish a baseline so that we can compare it to afterwards. There are different tests that are available that basically measure, all of them measure reaction time, some form of memory and concentration. Ideally test them before. The one caveat with neuropsych testing is that it's not really been proven to decrease morbidity and mortality. And it should be noted that it's only used as a tool in addition to the clinical assessment for concussion and getting people back to play. So not everybody who has had a concussion will get the post-injury test. We'll do it when we feel it's necessary. So don't expect that necessarily they'll be getting a post-concussion test on every single instance. And these are the different tests that are out there. There are more, but the one we are using is IMPACT. It's the only FDA-cleared and widely recognized and widely utilized worldwide is the impact test. Covenant, through their trauma program, has been able to secure funding to be able to offer that baseline test for free. So other tools that we use are a sideline assessment. Jen uses a SCAT, I believe, 3 or 5. 5. So the 5 is the most recent, corresponding to the 5th International Congress on Concussion. It's basically testing memory, concentration, those sort of things. King-Devick is another test it's nice, not everyone's using it. I use a SCOAT, which is a version of the SCAT. Sorry for all these acronyms, but that's Sports Concussion Office Assessment Tool. And I come up with a score, and I'm able to kind of monitor things along on a weekly basis if necessary. Plus, I do visual oculomotor screening and balance testing. And just a quick word about the long-term effects of head injury. You hear about it, this is why you hear about it all the time. It's in the news just about every day, it seems like. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE. Although there's concern about the possibility of concussions or repeated head injuries resulting in this CTE, there is no scientific direct link between the two. Just so you know, as of right now, today, I can't tell you that concussions cause CTE. There are probably many other factors involved, which might include genetics or substance abuse. A lot of different things can be involved as to why people develop chronic traumatic encephalopathy from head injury. So science is evolving and more information is needed. So if necessary, academic accommodations are provided, which usually with this disruption in the circuitry in the brain from concussion, it's difficult to concentrate and focus on school. And usually the surrounding stimuli can exacerbate this metabolic mismatch that I'm talking about. So they have a hard time learning. So either we will give time off, or perhaps part-time, or breaks when needed, or eliminate testing when necessary. The kids don't mind that too much. So the real point is there aren't any real good guidelines for return to learn, but the real important thing is that you should not be returning to sport until you're fully back into school activity without any accommodations or restrictions. So the return to play protocol, Michigan has a law. It's the 39th state to enact such laws. Every state has one. Essentially, it was instituted about 5 years ago, and I think there was an amendment to the Public Act last year to include actually education to the parents, but to extend concussion guidelines to the non-sanctioned events such as the high schools, but to include also the soccer leagues and things like that. But basically, concussion awareness is a part of the Public Act, but most importantly is the recognition and then the action of immediate removal of an athlete who has a suspected concussion. And in order for them to return to full participation, they need to be cleared with a written clearance by someone like myself or any other healthcare professional who treats concussions before they are able to return. The most important part of it is no same-day return. So suspected head injury, they don't go back in that day for fear of the second impact syndrome, which is the second concussion while you're healing from the first one. The consequences are quite bad. This is the form, one of the couple of forms that we use in the state of Michigan. Highlighted is the need to return to full activities of daily living, as well as returning to performing regular school activities, and having completed the exertional protocol for sport-specific drills. That's the return protocol. Jen almost always does this before we can see them in the office, and then at that point medically clear them to return. This is the protocol I typically use. There are different versions out there, but this is pretty much what most people are using. Other states have a longer protocol, much more conservative protocol, but this is the one most people are following in the state of Michigan. It's essentially a 5-day return where each day you increase activity little by little to see if you can provoke symptoms And if they don't develop any further symptoms of concussion, then they can graduate to the next level. And then by day 5, they're cleared and safe and should be able to return to play to full contact activity. So in summary, definition, impact to the head or body, often no loss of consciousness. I wanted you to understand what symptoms to look out for. Also understand what we do to evaluate and manage concussion. Realize that there is a return to play protocol, so when you're cleared of your concussion symptoms, you don't play that night. There's still several days before you return. And just a brief comment on the long-term effects, and that there's more research needed. So there are action plans, basically what I've gone through, educating you, understanding what concussion is, to sideline assessment, to baseline baseline testing, removal from play, a reevaluation, and then the return protocol. Involves everybody, parents, athletic trainers, athletic director, coaches. Everybody should be involved in this action plan. And the impact is, briefly, is the neurocognitive test that we've already offered to many of the students. We'll be testing the incoming freshmen here pretty soon. But basically, if you haven't received this baseline test, it's not the end of the world. There are some normative data values that are out there that I could still use if we did a post-injury test to compare with. So ideally, you would do a test afterwards and then compare it to the pre-test or pre-injury test levels. We administer it in a group in a place like a computer lab. It's about a 25-minute online test. It is kept on a secure web portal that I can access the information at any other point in the future. It measures attention span, working memory, sustained and selective attention time, nonverbal problem solving, and reaction time. It's a challenging test. Even those of us who've tried to take it just to check it out without a concussion, it's challenging. But there are ways to determine whether or not you guys are sandbagging it too. So don't try to mess up on the test. So if you do, we'll make you retake it again. Let's see. That should about do it. I did provide some resources, just links to our website, to the CDC, to the consensus statement, which I know Coach Carl said he read. I forget how many pages that is, but it's a kind of a dry read. It might put you to sleep, but it's good information. Also some links to the state of Michigan laws in case you're interested. Yes, Carl.
A copy of that sheet will be on the back table as you leave here today.
So any questions that anybody has about concussion or any other question for that matter? Yes?
What are the differences of, like, someone goes, they have a mild concussion? At what point do you consider that them being bad enough that they start to add up? You know what I mean?
So the number of concussions?
Right. I mean, do you consider if they're throwing up and all that to be?
So I don't, if someone has a concussion, they have a concussion. I don't grade it necessarily mild or severe.
Right.
I don't wish a severe concussion upon anyone, but with symptoms that are concerning that include neurologic changes or seizures or rapid change in consciousness, things like that. Those are danger signs, and if any of those should develop, and the coaches know this, I mean, those symptoms would prompt the need to get to emergency department right away to be evaluated to make sure it's not something more than just a concussion. For example, a bleed in the brain. So to add to your, I think, question or concern is how many concussions is too many concussions? Are you asking that?
Or they say you can't play.
Yeah, so there are no defined number of concussions that medically exclude someone from playing contact sports. A lot of people have heard the 3 concussions and you're out, you don't play contact sports. I don't know where that came from other than the fact that it's possibly, you know, referring to like baseball, 3 strikes, you're out. But I would say this, if there are 3 concussions in the same season, I would probably say you should not play the rest of that season. 3 within a year, I'd still be concerned. 3 in a lifetime, there's no exclusion for future participation in contact sport. But I would definitely have that conversation with the physician, you know, the parents, and the athlete. Is it worth it?
Well, we've had an instance where, you know, he hits his head, he falls back, hits his head. Take him to the doctor. Sometimes I wonder if they don't throw out concussion, even if, you know, nobody does any testing, you know, they just say, take it easy for a few days. That's where it's kind of like, you know, are they kind of throwing out concussion as a,
so there's
you know what I mean? If no real testing is done and there's no real...
It's a clinical diagnosis. Yeah, so it's a clinical diagnosis put together by all of the assessment tools that we use. I would say that there's a very wide range of methods in which people are managing concussion, from people who are primary care physicians who don't see a lot of kids and maybe occasionally see a concussion, to someone like myself who sees concussion daily. And with the science evolving day by day, some people just don't keep up on what the latest recommendations are. So it's managed differently in a lot of different places. It's easy to say, yeah, just stay out of sports for a few days. When you feel better, go ahead and you're okay. And gone are the days where we tell kids to go into a room, shut the lights off, lock the doors, take away all the iPads and everything. That is not the latest recommendation. It's actually wise to rest for a day or 2, but then thereafter, relative rest from both physical and cognitive activity. So I don't know if I answered your question at all, but there's a wide spectrum of how people manage it. Yeah, I'll stop there, but anyway, good points. We're good? Everybody still awake? No concussion symptoms?
What about like pre-existing conditions that athletes might have? How might that affect the symptoms and so on?
So there are some potential medical illnesses, diagnoses that can potentially prolong symptoms of concussion or complicate the concussion. And those pre-existing conditions might include, and very often include, attention deficit disorder, learning disorder. Those are very complicated concussion cases. They make the recovery challenging and sometimes longer. But if there's a personal or family history of migraines, or a history of epilepsy, history of meningitis, thyroid disease, also any type of psychiatric conditions such as depression or anxiety or sleep disorder, any of those above, that I just mentioned can complicate the concussion recovery. I think that's what you're asking. So we do pay special attention and ask those questions of all athletes. Do you have this history? Even family history of migraines can complicate a current concussion in the student athlete. All right, I'm getting rid of my Madonna speaker here.
Let's take this opportunity to thank Dr. Percy. It's pretty nice that he takes of his Sunday, his free time, to come here and share that with us. And I know we as coaches, we were very impressed with him when he came and talked to us. We all sat in on a learning session. And also, we as coaches have to take a concussion class online as we do our rules meeting every year. So there's lots of things we have to learn. So we do everything. I was talking to Jenna. I said, now make sure I'm not being false if I say this. I probably refer athletes to her more than I should. So I like to err on the side of caution, just so you understand that. And it used to be back when I played, it was like, Schmoogie, get back in there, you gotta be tough. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. I mean, we're concerned for their physical welfare. So if there's any hint of concussion, we'll have them check with Jen. And one of the things I want to make sure the athletes understand this year as well is that there's no peer pressure from them, and that they can help out, because sometimes, boys especially like to try to hide the fact that they have a concussion because they don't want to stop playing. And if I have any suspicion, of course, I'm saying, oh, too bad. But teammates can help us in that regard too, and we want to teach our kids to be good teammates and helping to tell us and get their friend get some help if it's necessary. So hopefully that was very helpful, and those papers on the back table there as you leave. Thank you, Doctor. Jen, by the way, is standing back by the door. I didn't introduce her before. She's our athletic trainer. So, it's she understands us. She's an MLS grad as well, if you didn't know that. And she's just really good. I always tell the guys, don't run to Jen like she's mommy every time you get a little bruise. And Jen will probably tell them, you're fine, get back out there. But she does do a thorough examination and does a great job with rehab. She works with therapy people every day, patients. So she's very good, and with the concussion protocol, she knows exactly what to do as well. So all of our kids last spring that were here on campus took the impact concussion test online. And the freshmen will be taking it as soon as we can make the arrangements for them with the new laptops that we have for them and so on and so forth. They can't really do it during camp because it can't be done during a time when they've gone through a lot of strenuous activity. The testing wouldn't be as accurate. So probably like one of the first days of school when there's no stress at all, we'll have them take it. No, we'll find a time that will work. Just a few more things about seminary football then. We have no cuts in football, so what does that mean? It means that parent support is crucial. So, I also coach a cut sport, baseball, and it's tough to make cuts because you love each kid. You know they want to be on the team, but there's only so many that can be on a team. Similarly, in football, you'd love to be able to have everyone play all the time, but you can only put 11 on the field at a time. So no cuts in football means that some guys won't play as much as others. But as I mentioned before, there's wonderful life lessons to learn with that. Not everyone can be the head football coach. Not everyone can be the principal. Not everyone can be the foreman. Not everyone can be the line worker. Whatever the case might be, everyone has a role in life. And it's a good time for students to start learning that when they're in sports. It's one of the best places to learn that. So I try to emphasize that everyone is important as part of the team. And some of our scout players, to be honest with you, over the years, some of those guys have come up to me at the end of their football experience and say, Coach, those were the best years of my life, even though they hardly ever played in a game. But they knew that they were a valuable part of the team to help their teammates get ready to be a starter. So we try to make everyone feel valuable and everyone understand their role. But your role in that is crucial as well. So be a good listener and encourager for your son. So what do parents often like to do when the game is over or when you see them? Hey, why didn't you, or you could do this, or why aren't you doing this? And we try to start coaching them up right away and telling them what they should do. Just listen to them. Kids just need someone to listen and to be an encourager, to be a supporter for them. That's an important thing. So at least give some time for them to talk and ask them how things are going. And then give up parenting for a few hours and let your child be coached. There's a real benefit to that. And it's hard for some of us, like me, when my kids were in sports, And some of my girls that played here were pretty decent basketball, volleyball players. One of them went to states for track, and they're, every once in a while they'd look at me at the stands like, what should I do, Dad? And I'm like, nope. You got to coach. Ask your coach. If they want to talk to me afterwards, about some tips or whatever, I'd be happy to talk to them. But if we can just give up parenting as parents and let the coaches do their job, that makes everything go a lot better, I think, for everyone. And let your child learn from successes and disappointments, and trust those who are in charge to do their job. So that makes our role a lot easier as coaches. All these guys are volunteering of their time. We as coaches, including me as a head coach, even as athletic director, we don't get extra pay for doing these extra jobs. My salary didn't all of a sudden bump up a ton. No, it's part of our calling here. It's what we do. We're here to serve. So, yeah, even the coaches in our league and our conference, they get flabbergasted sometimes. I'm like, what, Coach Schmuge, you don't get paid anything for coaching? What's wrong with you? But I'm like, well, you wouldn't want to coach anywhere else. It's a blessing to coach here. So make our job easier, though, by letting your child just learn from disappointments, from being a role player, if that's what his role is, by looking for ways he can improve. If he has gifts that he could improve, there's lots of things, but let us do our job too. Cheer everyone on the team. So lots of times it's so easy to focus just on our kid. And I get it, because we love our kids. Everyone wants their kid to start and to play. Why wouldn't we? We love our kids, right? And we even get kind of subjective feelings like, well, gosh, I know my daughter is better than that girl. Why isn't my daughter playing more? And we'll start talking to our friends. What do you think about that? And we get into that role sometimes that's very tempting for us to get into because we love our kids. But if we just let our kids be kids and learn from the coaches, and then we work at cheering everyone on the team and not just our own kid, then our kids can learn a lot from that, I believe. And I always give an 18-hour rule. So if you have concerns, well, if your child has a concern, your child should come and talk to the coach and say, what do I need to do to get better, or what am I doing wrong, or they can ask them whatever questions they would like. But I always say with parents, let there be an 18-hour rule before you would contact anyone on the coaching staff, because it kind of lets emotions wane a little bit. So coaches, we're in an emotional state too during a game, and then right after a game, win or lose. And there's a lot of things, a lot of time we put into it, and coming up to us right after a game and talking about playing time for your kid or something that's not the best time. Because we might even say something that we wish we wouldn't say because of our emotions, because we're not perfect. So if you wait 18 hours to make those discussions, then both sides can have a grown-up, godly discussion that hopefully is to the benefit of all. I just wanted to let you know a couple things about eligibility. Our students must at least have a 1.80 GPA to be eligible. Make sure quizzes and or tests that are missed are made up within 4 school days upon return to school. Otherwise, he will be in what's called academic detention. And that means if he's in academic detention, he cannot participate in that day's activity, even if it's a game. Now, they give you 1 free pass on that. So it's like, well, you know how kids can be. I didn't know I had to make that up. So I try to get my guys to look out for one another. Hey, Joe, you missed a quiz yesterday. Make sure you make it up. Or whatever the case might be. So whenever you miss something here at MLS, you get 4 school days to make it up. So you can find a time within those 4 days to do so. If you don't, you have to go to academic detention, and that hurts yourself and it hurts the team. This year's points of emphasis from the National Federation of High Schools: proper wearing and use of required equipment. Got to make sure you're wearing knee pads and all the other equipment that you're supposed to wear. If not, you have to go out at least for a play. Blindside blocks and defenseless players will be part of their emphasis this year. So a blindside block used to be pretty common. Wide receivers coming off the edge, he's going to go crack back on like an outside linebacker, or there's somebody on a kickoff. I'm just running down the field, and all of a sudden somebody comes from over here, boom, I go flying. You've seen that before, right? That's a penalty. Can't do that. Blindside blocks, if a person cannot have an opportunity to see you, it can be a blindside block, but also you have to have your hands extended. Generally, if you have your hands extended now, they won't throw the flag, because you can't get very vicious just with your hands out than you can like with the shoulder. So that's one of the things they're going to be looking for. Defenseless player is someone, again, who's not looking or is on the ground, and you're, driving into them on the ground. That's a penalty. An application of personal fouls and unsportsmanlike conduct, referees are going to make sure that they look for any roughhousing that's not proper, make sure they call that this year. Time management, they want to keep the game moving. There's probably going to be a time in the not too distant future when there's going to be a 40-second clock. So the play is over, and now you have 40 seconds until the snap of the ball, unless you have a delay of game. So they want to try to set the ball within 12 seconds after the play is over, and then you have 25 seconds right now to run a play. But that's something that they're looking at this year. Hydration, encourage your son to hydrate before, during, and after. I will too. We give them plenty of opportunities to do so. We weigh our players before and after practice sessions to assess fluid losses. For most athletes, the ideal fluid for prehydration and rehydration is water. Good old water, that's the best hydration there is. Fruit juices and pop can both result in a bloated feeling and stomach cramping. Beverages containing caffeine and carbonation are not to be used, mostly because they contribute to dehydration. Energy drinks are a big no-no. That can cause heart problems as well. By the time you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated, so you got to get hydrated. So we make our kids drink at certain times. We have breaks right into our schedule. We have water at the different drills that they're at. We have a 5-minute break after one point of time, and then we have a 10-minute break later on. But we have water available to them at all time. They can have water whenever they want it. It's always at their station. They have to have so much water to drink in the morning. At breakfast, so much water. It's something we'll talk about tonight at a team meeting. After practice, they have to have Gatorade that we provide. So we keep track of their hydration. Camp times. So basically we start at 7:50 to 8:35 with a Bible study and a little chalk talk where we talk about plays we want to learn that day. Then we practice from 8:50 to 11:25 roughly. Come back here for lunch. 1:30 to 4 o'clock is a light practice or film at school. We might go out in the field here and do special teams, walk through plays, meet in a classroom. We might weight lift. 6 o'clock we have chapel, and 6:50 to 8:45 is practice again in the evening. 10:30 is bedtime, and they'll be going to bed at 10:30 because they'll be tired. This weekend lodging, we want to make sure the dormitories are closed this weekend, so we're done by 4 o'clock on Friday. And sometimes we have kids that come from a distance, so make sure you can open up your home to some of these boys in case they need a place to go for the weekend because they can't go home. So if your son asks, hopefully you could say yes. Then next Sunday the dorm opens again at 4:30. They'll be able to eat again at 5, and then practice will be at 6:30 right here on campus next Sunday. Our scrimmages are all on Thursday, August 16th, 11 a.m. at Carleton. They're all at Carleton this year. The other teams are Flint Beecher, Cass City, Merrill, and Breckenridge. Our first games, we have 2 different games because Mayo does not have a JV. So our JVs will be playing Millington, who is going to be someone in our conference actually next year. JV will be away Wednesday, August 22nd at 7 p.m. Varsity will be at home. It should be Thursday. I'm sorry, I made a typo there. August 23rd at 7 p.m. The JV game might get switched to 6. Right now, it's on the schedule of 7. Millington's not in school at the time. I emailed their AD to see if we could change it to 6, let them know that we're in school, so we'll see what the response is from them, and we'll let you know. Varsity, for sure, we always eat team meals in the cafeteria before our games, home and away. If the townies want to eat there, it's $5. Unless they prepay it, it's a little bit cheaper. Through the business office, you can prepay. Chain gang volunteers are always welcome. Eric Nordley is in charge of the varsity chain gang. If there's a JV dad that wants to head up the chain gang, you could ask Eric. Eric, are you here? I thought I saw him. Yeah, he's back by the door there, standing. So if you have any questions about how that works, you could ask him. He could tell you how interesting it is to be right there on the sideline during games on the visitor sideline. A lot of the dads like to do that. So we'll always need volunteers for that, especially the JV games too. So if we can have that organized ahead of time, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
Just to be clear, it's a Thursday game, correct?
Yeah, I said Thursday, yeah. I made a typo, yep. I don't know if you noticed the new visitor bleachers out there. They're pretty awesome. Our visitor bleachers were awful. So we decided to go ahead with those bleachers first. We want to thank the foundation and its generous donors for this awesome gift of about $75,000. That includes the cement. Once you do this, of course, you have to be accessible for handicaps. So now there's a cement walkway part of the way there, and eventually there might even be parking on that end of the field, possibly. But right now it's cement right up to the ramp, and I think it can seat 400 people. So it's really nice for our visitors. If you make gifts to the foundation, to the Big Backyard Project, that will be matched until homecoming, up to $100,000. So if you want to make gifts to that, it's a great way to get going on our home side. We'd like to get our home side. Our home side costs about $200,000, if or not a little bit more, to do the home bleachers. Press box would be more on top of that. We also want to do concession stands and bathrooms. So that would be a wonderful addition to our facility. The bleachers, you know, the bleachers that we have out there were used when we got them. They were from Douglas MacArthur High School here in Saginaw. So I don't know how many years they've been there, quite a few, at least 30, if not longer, and they were used before that. So they're at the end of their age. We need to replace them. Just so you understand, new parents, athletes, and coaches are expected to ride with the team on school-issued transportation to and from an event. Sign-out sheets are at each away event. So on your registration forms, you indicate who your child can go with after a game if you want them to. You don't have to, okay? There's one for the dormitory too. But after each game, you can't just take your child and go away with them, because then we'll start panicking because we're responsible. So there's a sign-out sheet that will be probably near the bus or with the coach that you can sign out your son if you're on the list to sign him out. If your name or grandpa's name or auntie's name isn't on the list, then you can't take that child home, okay? If there's somebody that should be on the list that you didn't put on it when you started with registration, just call my office, the athletic office, tell us about it before the event, and we'll make sure their name is on there. ScoreStream is the way we post our scores. It's an app. You are encouraged to use the free app. It's kind of a cool app. You can take pictures and post it too. You can post the score as the game is going on, any of the athletic programs that we have. So it's a nice way, if you're not at the game, it's a nice way to keep kind of up to date too as to what's the score. And then we check that, we double check it to make sure the score is right once it gets posted, but then that streams into all of our social media accounts as well. Varsity parents host home after-game gatherings in the Commons. The guys look forward to this food. Tracy Vogel is our coordinator this year. Tracy, could you just please stand so everyone can see who you are? Okay, thanks for heading that up. She has a committee with Julie Borlaug, Christina Brockheisen, and Jennifer Martin. So they maybe have talked to some of you already about how you can do some things to help out the boys after the games when they want to eat like pigs and enjoy some. It's a nice gathering time for families to get together, whether it's a win or a loss. Just want to let you know about our flag football program, our Junior Cardinal Flag Football League. Registration is online on our website until September 11th. The season runs from September 12th to October 20th. It's grown exponentially every year that we've had it now, and it's for grades 1 through 5. So if you know of anyone that would be interested, practices are on Wednesdays from 5:45 to 6:30, so there's not a huge commitment of time. Games are held on Saturday mornings. So it's a great way for the boys to get exposed to teamwork and football, and it's fun to watch them. And my guys, the players, help coach them. Okay, now I just want to read through you the fun part, the extracurricular code, and then we'll be done. Students who participate in extracurriculars are ambassadors of Michigan Lutheran Seminary in a very special way. By virtue of participation, they are publicly identified with the school and everything for which it stands. The coaches, advisors, directors, and the administration of MLS give careful thought to that public identity as they make decisions guiding the conduct of all participants. Extracurricular participants are to achieve and maintain good academic standing as established by the school. Those with limited eligibility may practice but may not represent the school. You may not play in the game. In cases where represent the school is not clearly defined, the chairman of the extracurricular council, that's me, will decide how to apply limited eligibility status. Those ineligible must drop practice as well. Any change in eligibility takes place after the academic committee completes its grade review, after the first, second, fourth, and fifth terms, or when a new semester begins. Academic considerations always take precedence over extracurricular considerations. Extracurricular participants attend all practices, meetings, and performances unless excused in advance by the person in charge of the activity or unless detained for academic reasons such as period 10, or it could say their academic detention as well. So if your child has to be gone for, and I already had a parent tell me my child has a doctor's appointment this time or he's got to leave early here, that's fine, just let us know. Okay, it happens throughout the year, just let us know. In general, the rules of the school that apply to all students enrolled at MLS are the rules that govern the conduct of students involved in extracurriculars. In addition, the following rules of conduct apply to participants in extracurriculars. The status of students for practicing and performing in extracurriculars while they are under school discipline shall be determined by the Dean of Students in consultation with the adult in charge of that activity and the extracurricular chairman. It is possible for such discipline to carry over into the following school year. So if they do something stupid in the dorm and Dean disciplines them, he is the one to decide in consultation with the adult in charge if that student should participate in that activity. The use of tobacco in any form, alcoholic beverages of any kind, non-prescribed controlled drugs, and illegal performance-enhancing substances in any way will result in some degree of forfeiture of participation in an extracurricular activity. For example, in athletics, violation of these training rules will result in forfeiture of all participation for the remainder of that team's current season and for a minimum of 1 month's time. 2 violations in 1 school year will result in forfeiture of participation for all athletics that year. Other rules of conduct may include items such as curfew, dress, personal appearance, and the like. Those would be rules that the coach in that particular or activity director could tell them that they want them to follow. Our theme for this year that the captains came up with was Own It. So own it, here we're owning the schedule. We have to own the schedule, obviously, but I talked a little bit about this at our camp at Lansing. I'll talk with them more about it here at our camp, but the best part I told them is that we're owned by our Lord. We became owned by Him at our baptisms. So that helps us to own things and be responsible for things in this world as we live our lives as His children. So anyhow, that's the theme. That's going to be that's the front of your shirt, guys, for the shirts that you're getting. Yeah? Mm-hmm. All right. Any questions from any parents? Yes.
For the students that are commuting to camp, what door should they be instructed?
Good question. The doors that you came in tonight, those will be opened up in the morning. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to hook up my other laptop here that I have the highlights on. If you need to go as a parent, if you would like to go, you're welcome to say goodbye right now. Otherwise, you are welcome to stay and watch our highlights from last year. It'll take about 20-some minutes. So thank you for your attention.